breakfast right now, which is coffee, and I had a banana, and I had a cupcake.
I saw that cupcake.
Which is, yeah, the cupcakes look good. Those are really good cupcakes. So.
Samantha.
Samantha. I too had coffee and more coffee for breakfast today.
I didn't have anything for breakfast today, and I was still late. So.
And I had coffee for breakfast as well, and a granola bar on the way from USF St. Pete to USF Tampa.
All right. Debates, rallies, fundraisers. We are in the thick of the presidential primary season, and we're going to take a look behind the scenes with some political science students who were there for the New Hampshire primary, working for two very different campaigns. This is Florida Matters. I don't know, that might have sounded. I'm sitting in for Carson Cooper, here to give us the nitty-gritty. Oh my gosh, all right. I'm drinking my tea. Okay. Here to give us the nitty-gritty of what it's like to get out there in the field to work for a presidential candidate, USF producer of and WUSF's Mark Schreiner, producer of University Beat, who reported on the students in New Hampshire for an upcoming story. Does it sound really rough to you, or does it sound all right? Okay, it's just in my ears, I guess. Okay. You're getting the kids out of the ivory tower to see a little of how the sausage is made. So what are you hoping that your students will get out of the experience?
Well, this Road to the White House class, it's a 6-credit class. There's 3 credits for the seminar, which is about presidential campaigns and elections, and then 3 credits for the internship experience in New Hampshire. I've worked on 6 presidential primary campaigns in New Hampshire. I've worked on presidential campaigns all across the country. We've worked at the White House. Obviously, their syllabus is rigorous and includes, much of the scholarly reading. So much is on the line, and it's a really intense opportunity for them.
So Samantha, Kendall, let's talk about what it was like in New Hampshire a little bit. You both kept blogs of your experiences there, and Samantha, on your blog you talk about learning a whole new vocabulary, and you said, for instance, I don't even know how to pronounce this, vols, turf packets.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that.
So viz means visibility, and that was, the day of the polls, especially. I know Terran did a lot of viz, the day of the polls. Basically, you're just out in front of a polling place with signs, obviously you have to be a certain amount of feet away from the polling place. And then vols is just volunteers. A turf packet is basically when you are going out to canvass to knock on people's doors. They hand you a packet, and it has a map. It has names, addresses, whether they voted in the last 2 elections, what their voting habits are.
Even.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, things that I experienced up there, I don't think I would ever get. Even if I worked on a political campaign down here, I don't think it would be anywhere near as similar to what it is up there.
So Terran Winegeart, talk about the politics in New Hampshire. On your blog, you quoted someone at the New Hampshire Democratic Party as saying, quote, "We don't have sports teams, we have politics."
Right.
What was it like?
Well, it's interesting. They have in New Hampshire about 400 or so state representatives. So you can meet someone in the state house who is serving their, 3rd term as a state. In their community, they have other jobs. They make $200 annually. So their style of government really includes, the average American, kind of how the Founding Fathers wanted it originally. So it's a very nice change of pace. There's only 1.2 million people in New Hampshire. Having 400 people who, own local businesses, some are doctors, some are lawyers, some clean carpet, along those lines.
It's different than what you were used to.
Right, exactly.
So Mark Schreiner, you've reported on this class before, and the students, you were in the campaign offices.
Yeah, I had the chance to get up there, Robin, for the last 3 days of the election. I was up there on Monday and election day, following the students around as much as possible, and it was fun to see just... the nice thing was, by the time that I got up there, they were so embedded into their campaigns that in some cases, new volunteers were coming in, and the students we're showing them the ropes. We're telling them how to run a phone bank or make some phone calls, or maybe telling them who to talk to or who could help them. So it was nice to see that the students had really picked up and really taken a lot out of the experience to the extent that they were able to even teach other people about
So
that.
even in that small time, you saw them
Yeah.
evolve a bit.
A little bit, yeah.
Dr.
yeah.
McLaughlin, did you see that? Did you see them change in the 10 days?
And they can help when that final influx of volunteers come in from, out of states.
They're
and
the
from
old timers
colleges.
already.
They are the experienced hands, and so, I tell them before we go up, if you, throw yourself in there and you show initiative and you're smart and you pick things up fast, you're going to be able to have a leadership role, believe it or not, by the time GOTV weekend comes around. And so that was the case this time, so I was really proud of my students.
And Samantha, you were canvassing door to door. You were out there.
You have a mudroom door, and then you have like a front door, which apparently no one uses the front door. So we were knocking on the front door, and people would open it and say, "This is the wrong door. What are you doing?" And
So when you did reach people, were they tired of being approached already? Were they welcoming? How did most people seem?
most people were pretty welcoming. They would, let us know either, they had already voted absentee or, they already had a candidate in mind, and we would, kind of say occasional, doors slammed in our faces, but, we took it with a grain of salt, and for every, door we had slammed in our face, maybe 5 or 6 more people were very welcoming and very, they understand, they know that we're just trying to make a difference, and I think a lot of people appreciate the fact that we were younger people out there knocking on doors and trying to make, being involved in the political community.
Robin, I just want to kind of expand on something that Samantha's saying there. Particularly all the way up to the final days, there was a huge, huge percentage of voters in New Hampshire who were undecided. So a phone call or someone knocking on their door really could have been the thing that moved someone. I had a chance to listen to a lot of public radio the day of the election, and people were saying that there were times where they were literally walking up to the polling place, and
Waiting for something to hit them.
the last sign they saw was
Yeah.
the thing that moved them to vote for a candidate.
That's amazing.
It is.
Doesn't seem like a scientific way to make your decision.
Well,
but
and the other thing was that quite a few of the students, the other thing is that a number of the students were also psychology majors, not just political science majors. We had some psychology majors in the class, correct?
Yes, we did.
So they got, a tremendous lesson on the nature of human decision-making process and how to convince someone to do something.
yeah, and I should point out now, Samantha was working on the Bernie Sanders campaign, and Terran has been working on the Trump campaign. And I heard, Terran, that you did take some heat for volunteering for Donald Trump. Is that true?
Yeah, pretty much everywhere, every day.
What? From whom and why?
From me.
You name it. Whether we're phone banking and making outbound calls, it was pretty much, I'd say my little opening, something along the lines of "Good morning, my name's Terran, I'm volunteering for Donald Trump." Click, slam the phone down, hang up on me. Or walking up to a door, making the extra effort, walking through snow up to my knees in their driveway just to, share with them about Donald Trump. And just kind of have them peer around the door, look a little scared, and then close the door before I can finish my spiel. But,
What about from fellow students?
honestly, not really. If anything, it was more like in a joking manner. But everybody, we got Trump and Bernie right here. Everybody got along extremely fine. I think part of that is because we left a lot of politics out and made it more about being friends and
Meaning your group.
right,
Mhm.
and just supporting each other. I don't really know that many other students outside of the group who really knew that I did this whole thing.
And you
so-
started out wanting to work on the Ben Carson campaign.
right.
I think it would have been different if you had stuck with that plan.
I think it would have been extremely different. However, I will say,
Internships, and I guess the nature of our student body is we're about half and half Democrats and Republicans, and I try to reflect that in my classes. Now, I knew this time when we were starting the class with 15 Republican candidates, we were not going to have every campaign covered because there's just not that many seats in the van. But I was glad we had a nice representation. So we ended up with 12 Democrats and 11 Republicans, and we had students.
You know, he went to every single Bernie rally that was in New Hampshire when we were up there. And he was explaining that basically whatever the fate of the United States is, whatever happens in this election, it's going to affect Panama. So he didn't have a direct, correlation with, wanting to work for Bernie, but he explained that, whatever happens in the United States is going to affect him.
So he was going to all the rallies, but wasn't necessarily making phone calls, working on the campaign.
He did actually. He was a driver for some canvassers once the snow got really bad, because normally we would go out and walk places, but once the snow got bad, so he was involved. He was, had a stake. He really wanted to make a difference.
So Dr. McLaughlin, that's interesting to me. I mean, is that unusual to have people fly in that are not citizens and work on campaigns?
I have seen that before. I mean, it can be.
That's
Samantha
surprising.
says, yeah.
That was surprising to me. I want to ask you two, what was the most surprising thing for you that happened? But first, I want to see. Do you want me to do the break now? I don't know where we are on time. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and do the mid-time break. Coming up, I'm Robin Sessingham. This is Florida Matters. This is Florida Matters. I'm Robin Sessingham, sitting in for Carson Cooper, and we're talking about what it's like to go behind the scenes in this presidential primary campaign with USF St. Petersburg students Samantha Kendall and Terran Winegeart, their political science professor Judith Ann McLaughlin, and WUSF.
Making appearances at polling stations and whatnot. However, Mr. Trump's campaign wasn't exactly like that. It was very much mass media and ad-based. All of his rallies were massive. There was no one-on-one.
Almost more real that way. Like, he wasn't putting on a show
More
sort of thing. It was
personal.
just, it was more personal. It was just like, I am here. This is what I'm going to do for you. And that's it. There was no.
Did either one take any questions from the audience?
No.
So
Not at either of the events
these were
I
more
attended.
speeches then.
Yeah.
And rallies.
Yeah.
Okay.
But there were events where the students themselves were able to ask questions of the candidates. So that was the nice.
There's really no parallel, I don't think, to that kind of experience. Another thing that makes New Hampshire different from Florida as it relates to the primary is that in New Hampshire, the biggest block of voters are the non-party affiliated, undeclared voters, more so than either Democrats or Republicans. And unlike Florida, where we have a closed primary, where only those in the party can vote, in New Hampshire, the undeclared voters can vote in either. They can take either the Democrat or Republican ballot on the day. And so this.
He was talking about the craziness surrounding Trump, and people have tried to explain and understand it. What's your
I
your
think
take on that?
he's been able to bring in those folks who aren't, regular Republican primary voters, who aren't involved in politics or in campaigns typically, and now they're interested in him and what he has to say. So, one thing.
Going into it, I had no interest in running for anything. And seeing the amount of work that these people are putting in for these candidates, some of them are working 12 to 16-hour days, 5 to 7 days a week, going back to, April. It makes you want to be the kind of person that these people are willing to stand behind and devote that much of their life to. Because I really think that says something about, Bernie, Donald Trump, Marco Rubio, Jeb Bush. These people are literally devoting their lives. They're not getting enough sleep. They're not spending time with their family. They can't have a family because they care so much for these people and believe in them so much.
And then I guess the end one, okay. And even this had to get changed, where people were working, which campaigns they were working for. So do you think you need this again?
No,
Or
just
should we do it in
maybe
that?
just close your book and see the front cover there.
I felt like I was.
I mean, this was kind of my,
And camera is speed.
Identification purposes, name, spell your first and last name for me, please.
Victor Sims, Victor space SIMS.
What year are you and what are you studying, Victor?
This is my second year, and I'm studying psychology. I graduate this year.
Okay, so technically you're a senior, right?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Victor, what was the one thing that you really got out of your experience in New Hampshire?
Really on how the process works and what goes on a grassroots campaign. In class, she kept saying, we're going to have a grassroots campaign and a grassroots campaign. And I'm like, what the heck is that? You know, and of course I read the books and stuff like that, but still I was like, I don't know what a grassroots campaign is. What's the difference between that and, you know, a normal campaign? But then you see, like in New Hampshire, man, oh man, the doors are knocking and like, you know, calls like just constantly, like the same people. Like I know I went to the same house like 6 times, and it was just so different to, you know, be there and like see what happens in Florida compared to what happens in New Hampshire, because all we do is get calls typically.
The idea also that you are a psychology major, what did you pick up from just the nature of approaching particularly undecided voters or voters who maybe weren't looking at backing Hillary or needed to be convinced to back Hillary? How did that help with your major, so to speak?
I really just looked at body language. Whenever you're looking at the body language, you can tell like what triggers them. So like I would first try to get them talking about, you know, what they're looking for, and then if I can like relate, you know, something that they say to like Hillary Clinton's campaign, then I'll like, hey, you know, Hillary, you know, does this or Hillary does that, or, you know, I, you know, tell personal stories on why I support Hillary Clinton specifically.
What was it like to approach a candidate, a voter who, you know, has been inundated with, you know, people telling them about candidates for the last like 3 months? What were you doing? What could you do differently? What did you think of, you know, as a different approach?
I just got out of the I don't know. I saw a lot of people being more like robots instead of like people. Of course, we got all these scripts and stuff like what we're supposed to say and stuff like that. And I just took the approach of like, you know, approaching with a smile more than just like, okay, I hope they like answer the door. I hope they're not like gonna, you know, say I've heard this 5 times, you know, today, you know. I took on the approach of like, hey, when they knock on that door, I want them to see like how excited I am for Hillary, instead of like, hey, I'm doing this campaign and I hope, you know, I can get your vote.
One of the other things I was told was that you had you managed to ask a question of Jeb Bush at an event. The idea that you were able to talk to the candidates, particularly the people who weren't your candidates. Do you think that helps you as a voter? Helps you as someone in the political process?
Oh, most definitely. I got to see how Jeb like spent, you know, a little part of his history here in Florida. I asked him about, you know, foster care, you know, me being a foster child. I really am concerned about, you know, foster kids, our child welfare, our Title I students and stuff like that. And so whenever I asked him the question, he talked about this one child that, you know, he lost that was in foster care. And the fact of the matter is he didn't lose one child. He lost like 500. They were like undocumented and stuff like that. But I saw how he like didn't like tell the whole story, but he told enough to like convey his message. And I think that was a pretty cool, interesting part about, you know, seeing him as a candidate.
What was it like to be able to talk to the candidates, to meet the candidates, to see them as close as you guys were able to get?
I'm gonna be so honest, like I thought it was so amazing. Like, you know, the first Hillary Clinton rally, like I got invited on stage and like, you know, got to see, you know, I was gonna say that. I got to see it from a whole different angle than I would have if I were in front. But it was so, yes, I didn't know how to say that any better. But and then I went to another rally, and it just looked like every rally I went to with Clinton, like I just needed to be on stage with her. But the cool part about the second one is like Chelsea was there too, so I was on stage with the whole family. And I think that was, pretty cool. And one of the cool parts is, 3 days before the primary, Hillary Clinton's brother came up, Antonio Rotham, and we sat down and we talked for it had to be 2 hours on what she was doing wrong with the multimedia and how she wasn't engaging with the young vote the right way. Of course, she can go on stage and dab, and we'll make fun of her, probably till the day she passes, But the way that Bernie Sanders really utilize Snapchat and Instagram and his Facebook. Even I saw he had a Get Out to Vote Facebook event compared to Hillary Clinton just saying I hope you guys go out to vote on her own page. And I'm like, those are two different things, because in the morning, you're going to get up and you're going to get that notification that says, hey, you've got an event today, compared to man, I need to check Hillary Clinton's page. And so we had a whole bunch of discussions about how he could have, how she could have changed that and different things. And I thought it was so cool that he's like, yeah, I'm going to go back and I'm going to, talk to her, and then the next, right after the primary, I saw about how her whole social media plan was changing. I thought that was really cool, because I was like, maybe he told her, and I thought that was pretty awesome.
You are involved with USF St. Pete student government.
Oh yes.
Do you? I mean, as goofy as it sounds, is there anything you take away from a presidential campaign, the way a presidential campaign is run, that you may want to incorporate in the future, perhaps in your own electioneering?
I mean, speaking of that, our elections are coming up really soon. The packets are due tomorrow, so if you're gonna vote, if you're gonna run.
No, I can't do that, because then I need to give your other candidate, your opponent, equal time, and I don't have time.
But no, it's pretty cool to see them, to look at them. One thing that we saw with both this election and really the last 3 elections is, you want to get out the people who aren't typically voting, and that's really what happened in this past election with student government. I mean, the person who's our current president for student government, he got people who typically wouldn't have voted to get out and vote. Those are your commuter students who are just I'm just trying to go to class. We call them PCPs, Park Class Park, So I thought that was pretty cool, and I see we're seeing Trump doing that one, definitely. We're seeing Bernie Sanders getting the younger voters. Barack Obama, he got the younger voters, and the different minorities to come out and vote. And I think that's something that we really have to look at, is if you really want to win, you have to think about every aspect instead of the people who are typically coming out and controlling how the government works.
How old are you?
I'm 20.
20. So you've never voted in a presidential election before?
No, I have not.
Do you think you've made up your mind because of your time on the campaign on who you're going to vote for?
I can tell you, as I was coming towards the closer to getting closer to actually going to New Hampshire, I actually changed it with Dr. McLaughlin. I was actually going to work with Jeb Bush, but then I saw him on stage and was like, there's no way I want to see him as president. I could, State of the Union, and he just looked so sad, and I don't want to sad, he looked sad while he was running. I could imagine 8 years, or even 4 years, he's gonna be man, looking like Bernie or something, and we can't really afford that, So I told her, I was like, man, I want to switch. I gotta go for Clinton because she looked more exciting. I mean, Trump is very excited. Don't get me wrong, but Clinton, she looked excited. She looked more professional, and honestly, she knew how to get things done with the amount of experiences. So I think, being in this class, it gave me an extra opportunity to really analyze each candidate. So I was looking at, each of the events. I was looking up all of their platforms. I had to really get engaged because I didn't want to work for somebody that I didn't plan on really voting for. So I think that was, the hard part in the beginning, just figuring out who I wanted to work for.
Cool. All right, good. That's going to cover what I'm looking for. We good?
Yes.
All right, good. Thank you.
And camera roll.
Identification purposes, name, spell your first and last name for me, please.
It's Terran Winegeart, Terran Winegeart.
Terran, what year are you and what are you studying?
I'm a sophomore and I'm studying political science.
How old are you, Terran?
19.
19. Terran, if there was one thing that you took away from your 10 days in New Hampshire, what would it be?
Making me choose. The thing that I took most from this is how the campaign process in these early states is changing. New Hampshire is a grassroots state. People want you knocking on their door and, want the candidate, to come around and, kiss your baby and sit and have dinner and coffee and whatever. Donald Trump didn't run his campaign like that. It was very mass media, a lot of advertisements, and very little one-on-one time, not really any town halls where he's answering, possible voters' questions, just big events. Yet he somehow still managed to win by an unbelievable margin in a state where people take offense to not, getting to personally meet the candidate and chat with him over lunch or something. So it's incredible how, one person who's not even a politician can come in and just change the game.
Do you think it's added to your experience in any way, the fact that your candidate won? Do you think it would have been a different time for you if your candidate, say, finished in second or third or even worse?
Oh, man. Being that Mr. Trump didn't win Iowa, if he wouldn't have won, I think there would have been, some serious issues. So I can definitely tell you, I know there were people, who were worried about him losing, and there was just a different attitude in the building leading up to the primary. But he won. I can, include the word winning campaign, on my resume now. So, I'm definitely pleased with the result.
The idea of the fact that you guys got the chance to get up close to the candidates, to meet the candidates, in your experience, I think I saw you had got your picture taken with at least 2 different candidates.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Donald Trump and Ben Carson were the 2 that I could get pictures with. Also met Marco Rubio on his way out of his headquarters the night of the primary. Very awkward.
What was awkward?
I'm just sitting in the passenger seat of this 15-passenger van. I've got a window that rolls down, and being that he's a senator in Florida, I was a little starstruck, even though I'd already met him. And I see these 2 little kids come strolling out of the building, and I'm like, man, those kids are dressed to the nines. Those suits are more expensive than any clothes I'll ever wear. And then I look up, and I was like, that's Marco Rubio and his wife, and those are his kids. And, the driver's like, hey, don't bother him or anything. He's on his way out with his family. And I rolled down the window without even thinking about it. And I, said, hey, Senator Rubio, it's the South Florida fan club. We've been following you around all day. And he came over and shook my hand and said, thanks for the support. He opened up the doors to the back of the van, crawled in, shook everybody's hands, and said a couple words before he left. So being able to get into that kind of intimate situation with each candidate really helps you get past how the media portrays them and playing the same clips over and over and over again. You can really just talk with them, you know what I mean, and have a conversation that you wouldn't get just by flipping on CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, whatever. So getting up close and personal, I think, really is important, and I think that's why New Hampshire plays such a vital role in the outcome of the elections nationwide, because these people really do get a chance to just ask a question, like a couple of our classmates did at a Jeb Bush rally, at a Marco Rubio rally. These people are more involved, they have a more firsthand experience, and I think it makes a massive difference.
And you were saying earlier when we were doing the radio show what it was like for you to deal with the public, that maybe there was a little more, I don't want to use the word animosity, but they treated the Trump candidacy a little bit differently than other candidates.
Animosity is a good word. I don't know what you're talking about. Answering phones, people were very quick to hang up as soon as they heard Donald Trump.
Let's start that again, just with the answering phones.
Yeah, so answering phones, people were very quick to hang up as soon as they heard Donald Trump. Answering doors, the minute you say Donald Trump, the door cracks a little bit, and and they're just sticking a little bit of their face out. And it was definitely received differently than what I imagined, being that he's always polling so high. He's got so much support, got over 100,000 votes in the actual election. But it was obvious that we were targeting people that weren't voting for him. And Trump always likes to talk about how
his closet supporters are massive. And I definitely think that's the case, because most people you're targeting, the people who get out and vote regularly, they're not voting for Donald Trump. They don't want anything to do with anybody that is wearing a hat with Donald Trump's name on it. You know what I mean? But it was an experience for sure. I work in a call center in daily life. I have people getting mad at me all the time. But, you know, you'd feel like with a presidential candidacy, an election process going on, people would be a little more respectful and whatnot. But, you know, depending on your views, you know, if somebody showed up to me from a campaign that I didn't like, I can't say that I wouldn't do the same thing.
And also, how do you think this is going to set you up for the future? What do you want to do in the future? Do you want to continue in politics?
At some point, I would like to definitely get back into politics. I actually met someone while I was in New Hampshire whose brother-in-law is the mayor of the city I work in, and apparently he's going to run for governor, so I might have a connection to get onto that campaign. I think that would be really awesome to do. I think being a judge would be kind of awesome. But, you know, up until I really get settled into whatever career I get into, I definitely think you'll be able to find me on a campaign somewhere.
Cool. And lastly, one more time, 19 years old?
19, yeah.
Never voted in a presidential election before. What do you think it means that you were able to work on a campaign before you're even able to vote?
Honestly, I'm very thankful for it. Without, you know, Dr. Judith Ann organizing this whole thing, I can tell you I most likely would not have voted, because I wouldn't have gotten involved enough to make an informed decision. However, you know, when you're bouncing around from headquarters to headquarters and going to all these events, you can't help but get informed, you know what I mean? I've always had, you know, at least a minor interest in politics at some point, but being able to, you know, be proactive, go on this trip, meet all these people, go to all these events and whatnot, it definitely sheds light on how important it is to vote. Because, you know, my mom and dad will tell me all day, go out and vote, it's very important. Okay, Mom and Dad, I'm sure it is, you know. But when you're actually involved and you're trying to get other people to get out and vote, it sort of dawns on you how important it really is. So I am definitely glad that I was able to go on this trip to be able to have that sort of coming of age, I guess.
Excellent. Good deal. Two things, Jesse, I want to see if we could get. One would be if I get him to hold up the Trump hat.
Okay.
Maybe with his hand inside. You can just chill him with that. There you go. Something like that.
Okay, hold there.
I know it's a little goofy, but
It's good. It's a good time.
Okay, got it.
and then the other thing is if you can just kind of straighten that shirt out just a little bit so I can get there you go. Can you just shoot the shirt a little bit of a close up? Thank you.
Wanna just? You mind if I take that mic off? Yeah. Maybe do the hat again if you don't mind. After.
Oh, okay, yeah, that works.
Just you pull there we go. Thank you. I just don't want it to read Road to the White House.
Alright, that's good.
Road
And
to
then
the
hat
White
again.
House. Yeah. That would have been good.
No, it wouldn't.
Now just put it right in front of your shirt.
Right in front of my shirt?
There you go, yep.
Man,
It's like a photo shoot.
It really is.
We're not gonna make you wear it. That's the other
Cool.
thing.
Alright, got that.
Believe me, between these
Now, are you okay with the other guys?
Yeah.
And are they able to go, or do you want to stay?
If you
Okay.
And the camera is rolling this time.
Oh, hello.
Yeah,
Okay,
Jeff
all
just
right.
double checked and we're good.
identification
Confirm?
purposes, name and title, please.
Judith Ann Scourfield McLaughlin, Associate Professor of Political Science at the University of South Florida, St. Petersburg.
Purpose of the Road to the White House.
The Road to the White House is a 6-credit class. 3 credits is for a seminar on presidential campaigns and elections, and 3 credits for an internship on a presidential campaign in New Hampshire leading up to the First in the Nation primary. And the goal of the class is for students to become, to have a better understanding of how presidential campaigns and elections work.
the fact that it is New Hampshire, and in addition to all the campaigning, you do add in quite a bit of historical and educational purposes of New Hampshire and New Hampshire politics, New Hampshire elections. Why do you do that?
Well, there is really nothing like New Hampshire's First in the Nation primary, and this year was actually the 100th anniversary of the First in the Nation primary in New Hampshire, and it is exhilarating, it is electrifying, it is completely exhausting for all of us, but there's really nothing quite like it. And so we have a 10-day itinerary up in New Hampshire, and it is completely packed. We leave early in the morning, and by early I mean before 6 a.m., and we are out all day at events and activities, and they're campaigning, and then we get back late at night, and then it starts again early the next day. And I put together an itinerary. So we meet as a seminar over breakfast at the hotel every morning. Sometimes we're meeting with journalists or academics. We are going to campaign events. We are going to meet with folks at the political parties, and we're going to the State House. And all of this is designed for them to learn more about New Hampshire politics, issues that are important to New Hampshire voters, which should help them when they're out campaigning for the presidential candidates there in New Hampshire. So this time I took the entire class. We went to see Hillary Clinton and President Bill Clinton the morning when they arrived right after the Iowa caucuses. We took the whole class to a town hall with Senator Marco Rubio. The whole class went to a town hall with Governor Jeb Bush, and the whole class went to a rally with Donald Trump out in Portsmouth. We spent a whole day actually at the State House in New Hampshire. They went to the New Hampshire State Senate and the New Hampshire State House. They met with a member of the Executive Council. They attended the Governor's State of the State address. So they had a tour of the State House where they were able to learn more about government and politics in New Hampshire. One of the things that really impressed the students in the class about New Hampshire is a state that, as small as it is, I mean, about the same number of voters as our Pinellas County almost. And they have a state house that has 400 members, which makes it the third largest legislative body in the English-speaking world. But there's more than 4,000 offices that are up every 2 years. Even the governor only serves a 2-year term, so there are continual elections. In March, they have their town meetings where the whole town will vote on the budget of the town. So it's about as close to direct democracy as we have. So it's a very special place. The students learn about grassroots organizing and retail politics, and they get to see their candidates up close and personal, answering questions from voters. They see the candidates, shaking hands at diners, and it's really a very special opportunity for the students to learn about presidential campaigns and elections, and about organizing on campaigns, and in a way that's very different from Florida. So here we have a lot of, media, 30-second sound bites. It's hard for a presidential candidate to get to know all of the millions of voters in Florida. We're just so big. So it's a very different feel for them up in New Hampshire.
And the idea that they get to see not just their candidate, but other candidates and other campaigns, why is that important?
It's important for them to see. I mean, in my class, I think the diversity is very important. So I try to have a nice mix of political parties and presidential campaigns. I knew this time it was going to be hard to have every campaign covered, which is usually the case. Usually we have somebody on every campaign. But this time we had 15 presidential campaigns on the Republican side alone. So there's just not that many seats in the van. So I knew we wouldn't have every campaign covered, but we had a good diversity. So we had, on the Democratic side, we had students working for Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, and Martin O'Malley for the first day. And then on the Republican side, we had students working for Rubio, Bush, Cruz, and Trump. So it was a good diversity. I think it's important for students to learn more about all the candidates, but also to see.
Start that again with I think it's important.
I think it's important for students to learn about all the candidates who are running. So actually the first class, they do research papers on every single candidate who's running, and we watch ads and we look at their website, because I want them to know about all the candidates, number one. But number two, the candidates are running different kinds of campaigns. So the more campaigns that we can have represented in our class and the more campaign events that I can take my students to, they can see. I mean, when we're at an event with Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton, you know, and there's the Secret Service, and it's just very different organizationally than, you know, some of the smaller town hall meetings that we went to where we don't have the mags and the Secret Service and all of that. So it's good for them to see how these other campaigns are working rather than just learning about their own, but I want them to learn about all the campaigns and learn about the whole process.
3 last questions.
And the camera's rolling again.
For sure.
It's rolling.
The idea of not just meeting the candidates, but meeting the surrogates and talking to media from all over the world in some cases, how does that add to the experience for the students?
Well, it's just incredible. And I told them, you're going to be international media superstars. And they looked at me like, what is she talking about? They kind of brushed it aside. But we're up there, and my students are in the New York Times, and they're on CNN, and they're on MSNBC, and they're on television in Japan, and France, and Spain, and Norway, and Denmark, and all across America, and including Tampa Bay. And it's just incredible. And they realize when they're up there, it kind of dawns on them the importance for America and the rest of the world, what happens with our presidential election. And it's just incredible for them to really, you know, people are coming in, they want to know, okay, well, you're a young person, you're involved, what are you thinking? And they're getting to give these interviews, and it's just an amazing experience for them. I think, you know, they also get a chance to meet the national, you know, campaign staff and leadership on the campaigns where they're working. And a key element of the campaigns up there is all the candidates have surrogates who come in. So my students are meeting with governors and senators and members of Congress, mayors from all across the country, rock stars, movie stars, TV stars, all kinds of folks who are coming up to stump for their candidate. And you know, this was great. This was when I dropped the students off at their placement in the Hillary office. They had all kinds, I mean, Olympic gold medals, you name it. Everyone's coming in to stump and campaign. And so they get to meet all kinds of people. But I encourage them to talk not just to these, you know, celebrities who come in as surrogates, but also the New Hampshire activists who are there on the campaign, who have been working on the campaign for months, and who are from New Hampshire. And, you know, I encourage my students to be like sponges, just soaking it all in all the time, because they can learn from everything and everyone at all times. I guess it's a little bit overwhelming, but I don't want them to lose any opportunity. So when they have a volunteer from New Hampshire who's taking them driving, because usually they have local drivers. They're not putting, you know, our Floridians who have never seen snow as drivers of cars in canvassing. But when they're going out with their, you know, a volunteer, I'm like, you talk to them, ask them questions. Always be asking questions all the time and wherever you are, to learn as much as you can from everyone. But they see themselves in this fishbowl, in this place where it just seems like everyone from around the world has descended upon New Hampshire, and they're really exhilarated to be a part of something so big.
The idea that maybe, what do you want for them in terms of possible future in politics, or at least possible future engagement?
Well, the thing that's been driving my whole career is this passion about civic education and civic engagement. And so my main goal would be for them to learn, of course, about presidential campaigns and elections, but to be inspired by this experience, to understand how important their voice is in our politics, in our government, to be inspired that they can make a difference, that they can work together to make our community better. And so ultimately, I would like to see them become involved, you know, and to be volunteers later on, to certainly to make sure they never let an election go by and not vote. I think that would be tragic. Now, many of them do go on to have wonderful careers. They make connections. That leads to internships, that lead to jobs on campaigns at the White House. in other areas of government, which is great. So they're certainly making the connections needed to have successful careers in government and politics, and that's great. But I'm not expecting that all of them is going to become a campaign operative as a result of the class, but I am hoping that all of them will leave the class inspired to participate in American government.
And lastly, what's it like watching students who've never been in the snow before navigate snow for the first time, particularly when they're out canvassing or out holding signs on election day?
You know, the first few days we were in New Hampshire this time, it was in the 50s, little 60s, and I was feeling like, you know, the weather's making a liar out of me, because I had told them, you need to pack your sweaters and you need to bring, you know, ski jackets, you need to have boots, and you need to prepare for cold, and trying to impress upon them what it is like to be cold and what it is like to be canvassing in the snow and doing viz in a, you know, snowbank for hours with signs, you know, outside of a presidential debate or something like this. And there was no snow initially. So I think there is a little disappointment, and I was like, gosh, I hope it snows, because everyone's really wanting this experience. Not, how is this, you know, not a New Hampshire primary without snow? So finally we got a lot of snow, and it was incredible. The day of this snowstorm, I was dropping the students off at the Hillary Clinton campaign office in Salem, and Governor Howard Dean was there, and he noticed our students in their USF attire, and he was like, well, who are you, and where are you from? And they're like, we're from Florida. And he said, have you ever seen snow before? Raise your hand if you've never seen snow. And they raise their hand. He's like, well, let's go outside and see the snow. And it was incredible. And they were out there canvassing, and I think at first it was really funny, and they were really excited to be out in the snow. And then after, you know, a little while, they realized it's actually pretty cold. But they had a great time. It definitely made the New Hampshire primary experience, this opportunity to be out in the snow. Yeah, it was in 2004. I had just moved here, and most of the students had never seen snow, had never been out of Florida before. And I was joking with one of the students. I said, oh, well, you can leave your flip-flops at home. And she said, I can? So just tennis shoes then. And I was like, no tennis shoes. You cannot wear tennis shoes in New Hampshire either. It's going to be snow and ice. So anyway, that's when I realized that I needed to do a little bit more preparation to make sure they understood really how cold and snowy and icy it was going to be. But they did great, you know, and there's a lot of territory there where they're climbing up, you know, steep driveways in the snow, and they were trudging, and no one ever complained. They were just working hard every day for their candidates, so it was good to see.
Okay, that's going to cover what we're looking for.
You think we got everything the second time?
We got it.
They had everyone. They started
nice.
texting
Got
me
that?
pictures.